Okay, perfect. We're live now. So typically I usually give it, a minute or two to give people a chance to hop on. And actually I need to tweet this out too. I guess it's in the joys of today's tastings. It's like, oh, did I put it on every social media account that I have?
Digital age.
Okay, cool. That's enough. It's a balancing act. You don't want to just have people sitting here waiting, watching us stare at the camera.
But you don't want to miss a bunch of people either.
Exactly. We'll let them trickle in. But all right, I'll do a quick pause, and that way I can cut it for YouTube, make it easier, and then we'll jump straight in. Welcome everyone. I'm Blake from Sealbox and Bourboner. Today we're here for another barrel pick. People love to kind of see what goes on behind these things and the tastings and everything. So Dee and myself are joined by Alex Castle from Old Dominick Distillery in Memphis, Tennessee. And so thank you both for being here.
Thank you.
Dee, I always, whenever I'm like typing these things up, for some reason I try to do D and I, but then it wants to do D and me, and then that sounds like a 1980s cartoon.
It sounds like a song or a show or something.
Yeah. And then I try to correct it, and they're like, no, it's definitely D and me. It's not D and I. So, but no, Alex, thank you for being here. And if you want to go ahead and kind of introduce yourself and Old Dominick a little bit, and we'll start jumping in.
Yeah, so Alex Castle, the Master Distiller and Senior Vice President of Old Dominick. I've been with Old Dominick for a little over 5 years at this point. I originally hail from Kentucky. I grew up in bourbon country. Used to work for Wild Turkey before moving south to Tennessee. And Old Dominick has a very long history. It was founded back in 1866 by an Italian immigrant, Domenico Canali. He came over from Italy and settled in Memphis, and after working for his uncle for a little while, decided to start his own company called D. Canali Company, and it started as a fruit cart that they would just kind of roll up and down Front Street, I guess. And shortly thereafter, he decided to found his own whiskey line as well, and he called it Old Dominick after himself. He didn't distill his own product. He just bought barrels from Kentucky, Ohio, anywhere that had aged product at the time. But it was a very popular brand at the time. And unfortunately, Prohibition happened and the brand effectively died at that time. Fortunately for us, the family held on to the brand name. And so in 2013, 2014, the current president, Chris Canali Jr., he's a fifth generation owner, decided to revitalize the brand and kind of get a really big footprint in Memphis, and decided to build a distillery right in downtown. So we are 2 blocks from Beale Street. And unlike Domenico, we do actually produce our own product here on site.
Very cool. Yeah, and that's, I kind of love the being from outside the Kentucky bourbon world. It's kind of cool to see people going from, I'm sure growing up in Kentucky, everybody just assumes you're going to stay home. And it's like, no, you can go do really cool things in the industry and make incredible products outside of Kentucky. That seems crazy to some, but I'm sure the family pushback on that may have been like, well, what about all these distilleries right here?
No, fortunately, my parents were incredibly supportive. What's funny is Kentucky is the heart of bourbon country, but you have to kind of have that lineage. You have to have that family history.
There's a reason there's the same last names popping up at
Yes.
almost every distillery. Yeah.
And so the more opportunities exist outside of Kentucky. So it's really the big distilleries that exist in Kentucky. A couple small ones are finally popping up, but for a long time, it was the big guys and that was it. And if you weren't part of the family, you could only go so far.
Yeah. Yeah. That is really interesting. And people, which I feel like for the longest time, it was because, all the distilling, we didn't have as much science and education around it. So this was all handed down. And then as that kind of, came more online, it's like, oh, well, it's still just the same thing. There's still a Beam, a Willet, Parker's, one of those names just popping up about everywhere. But it's cool from, an outsider's perspective. But I'm sure it's also nice to kind of break out and do your own thing as well. Well, cool. Well, so we have 3 barrels here to taste. So tell us a little bit about it. I mean, I know these are the high rye, the 44% rye barrels. Is that?
Yeah.
Okay. And then do we have an age range?
Yep. So they are all 6 years old.
Okay. Nice. And then they are all at barrel proof, which always makes it fun for a Friday afternoon tasting. Well, cool. Well, we can dive straight into it. I poured 597 first, and yeah, let's get on in. And so this is the one I cheated a little bit on and poured a little bit the other day. But what's amazing to me is initially, like, I didn't get. I knew the mash bill. I knew it was. Can we say extremely high rye? Is that that could also be a marketing? I guess if people use extremely small batch, you can use extremely high.
What's considered, when you're doing a bourbon, what's considered in terms of percentage in a mash bill, what's considered high rye content?
So there is no legal definition. I know just from when I used to work at other distilleries, you'd hear people call 13% high rye. So if that was the definition of high rye, then we are definitely extremely high rye. Because if you think about it, rye whiskey is 51% rye, so we are.
You're right there.
Almost there.
I think, Buffalo Trace, while they don't release it, it's like, well, this is our low rye, it's somewhere around 10 to 12%, and this is our high rye, it's somewhere around 15%. It's like, people come along, and obviously, like Four Roses has a much higher. I think they're 35%, and but yeah, this is, I think, one of the highest rye contents of a bourbon I've really seen. But man, I don't get a ton of crazy, like what you would think initially, where you get a lot of like that mintiness and pepperiness. I get a little bit of the spice on the finish, but really just golden raisins and brown sugar, like just a lot of really good notes.
Yeah, a lot of dark fruits, a lot of like dark burnt sugar.
Yeah.
And we do a number 4 char, so that's where you're getting a lot of that brown sugar, that caramel. It's all coming from that number 4 char barrel.
Maybe we get some tart cherry.
This is where I rely on Dee's sommelier come through. I'm like, here's what I like, here's what I don't like, and some notes that I get much more nicely than I.
Whereas I'm looking for the poetry.
Water. Yeah, and actually, I get some, like, a little bit of burnt orange peel on the palate, a little bit there, and man, just. And now, I know y'all had an interesting story as well, where you basically, I guess in the glory days of whiskey making, were able to go to MGP and say, hey, here's the mash bill we want, here's the yeast, here's our barrels. You actually, I think I'm remembering this correctly, cut barrels from land or oak trees that were owned by, so yeah, can we dive into that story a little bit?
Yeah.
That's that nerdy kind of.
Yeah, so back in 2014, when they knew they wanted a distillery, we knew we wanted some aged product. We have a flavored bourbon that we wanted to have when we opened, called the Toddy. And so we knew we needed some bourbon. So we took our recipe, our yeast, everything to MGP when they were still allowing you to do custom mash bills, and had them make our bourbon for us. And you are correct, the barrels, I forget how many barrels total, but we actually have several hundred barrels that all came from Canali land. So the Canalis had a ton of timberland in the West Tennessee region and had a ton of white oak on it. And so we actually went onto that property and harvested the white oak and had it cut into staves and then turned into barrels.
Interesting. Which is that's just really cool, and kind of adds to the terroir and everything else of the product. But so now currently you're distilling everything in-house, or are you still okay?
Yep, we do everything in-house now.
Is there a year that will kind of be the switch from the other barrels to what was distilled in-house, or
so we've kind of set it up. We have a lot of MGP products still. And so the Huling Station line, what we're tasting today, will live on for, I don't even know how long. It'll live on its own. And then hopefully in 2022, we'll get to start releasing Old Dominick whiskey. And that'll be a bourbon, a wheat, and a Tennessee whiskey as well.
Okay.
Very interesting. Okay. I get a little bit. I just bounce from one whiskey to another. So I've poured 607 and I've kind of started nosing it as well. And but man, just on the nose, way more. I get more toasted sugars, like a toasted marshmallow, a butterscotch, just really incredible kind of those sweeter notes, which I love. And it drives me a little bit crazy when people always act like they want like heavy alcohol and spice in their whiskey. I'm like, no, everybody loves something that tastes delicious. So let's not act like if butterscotch is in the nose, you're going to act like it's not up your alley. A little bit of bright cherry note on the nose as well. Man,
Ooh, that's good.
that is.
Definitely.
So it's interesting and so these would have been, okay, so 597 to 607. So we're only talking about 10 barrels apart. So probably the same run of distillate, I would assume. And
all of this, I think all three of these would have been from the same run, because if you think about MGP, their definition of a run is a very, very large,
much wider. For sure.
I have a question, Alex. So would this be 44% rice, and then is it 56% bourbon? Is there nothing else?
It's 52% corn, and then the balance is malted barley.
Okay, malted barley. Okay.
Yeah, just a tiny amount of malted barley for the enzymes.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, this is just, man, that's kind of crazy actually. So, and Alex, I'd love to hear your tasting notes on this so I can, like I do get.
You guys are doing a great job.
Like burnt sugar and everything, and it kind of hits a little bit of the fruit and spice, but then the finish is, I get it's a little spicier, and which I kind of like. And I had somebody describe it one time. They're like, all right, when I'm trying to taste, I want it to be like a witch's hat. So it's kind of comes up, hits a big spice note, comes back down on the finish where it is good, but this one kind of like starts here and then does a nice little spice kick at the end, which is good.
I'm going to ask a nerdy question. So, you mentioned the enzyme, you're bringing in the malted barley for the enzyme. Can you talk about what that does? Like what incorporating the malted barley actually does in the process?
Yeah, so enzymes, when you're talking chemistry, enzymes are added to a chemical reaction to help improve the yield. And so by adding enzymes, you're allowing those starches to be converted into sugars, and you're going to get a better a better conversion. You're going to convert even more starches into those sugars. And the sugar is important because that's what the yeast eats to produce alcohol.
And so the barley just does a better job of doing that than the corn and the rye will.
So malted barley, actually, with the malting process, actually creates those enzymes. It naturally has it, whereas rye and corn don't really have enzymes.
Okay.
So they have the sugar, they have the starches.
With barley.
If when people they do like a malted rye, you don't see much malted corn, but like a malted rye, that would be developing the same enzymes essentially.
Yeah, it's the malting process, not necessarily the growing.
Correct. Yeah, you would have some enzymes, but honestly, a lot of us use additional enzymes on top of it, because what's great about enzymes, they don't affect the flavor. They go in there, they help the reaction, but they impart no character to the final product.
That's interesting. And now you have a bioengineering background or a chemistry background, I think.
Chemical engineering.
Okay. Yeah. It's always my favorite thing about this world when you talk to people and they're like, oh yeah, we're going to start a distillery because my granddad was a moonshiner. And I'm like, trust me, it is a much more complex, like there is plenty of, advanced degrees in chemical engineering and PhDs that not quite as fun and that kind of dramatized story as it sounds at times.
No.
Did not support in alcohol who are making really great products. It's pretty cool.
All right.
What barrels everyone on?
So Alex, any thoughts on the first two so far? I mean, and I know it's probably like picking a favorite child and all of that, but
when it comes to single barrel picks, I try to stay out of it because this is
fair enough. I like that. And then at the end, you can just tell us we picked the right one.
Exactly. Because the thing is all three of these, I taste every barrel that comes in and I say if it qualifies as single barrel or not. So you're tasting three barrels that I like all of them.
Yeah.
You can't go wrong with any of them.
All right, Dee, in that case, your first impressions on the first two barrels.
Okay, I think my front runner taste-wise still might be the first.
The first one? Ooh. So we have never, and Alex, so Dee and I picked quite a few barrels together, and we've never had like a real knockdown drag out of who, I like this one, she likes that one. So I don't know. I'm kind of on barrel number 2, 607 right now. So this could be interesting.
Both are good. I gotta have it.
No. We need you to.
Yeah. On the palate, I like the first one.
So 648, really interesting as well. And just, man, I know which 6 years old is, in today's bourbon world, we like to say just 6 years old, but historically speaking, I know most master distillers would say between 6 and 8 was when bourbon was hitting its peak, and you really start to see that these days with some of these products, because just there's good developed sweet notes, some fruitiness comes out. There's plenty of oak, but it's balanced and.
A lot of those.
So that to me is like, I don't know if anybody does this, but like a barrel aged maraschino cherry where it is some of that brighter fruit, but just good tannins on the finish. Just a lot of orange zest and cinnamon and almost a little bit of clove, some of the drier baking spices. This is not making it easy. I'll say that.
Yeah, I was trying to figure out who the front runner was now.
I know.
I have to keep bouncing between these right now.
And I should have done dishes last night because I guess I do have enough glasses where I could line them all up side by side, but I'm rinsing and drinking out of the same glass each time. But
see, that's a shame because one thing I always like to do is go quickly from one to the next, smelling them. Pick which one has your favorite nose.
I'll take the pro advice, and I will do that. Now I got to make sure I have them all in the same order. Okay. So now, Alex, whenever you're going through that single barrel selection process, what are you looking for? I mean, is it, your personal preference, kind of the flavor profile, you're going with the brand, or, I'm sure any kind of flaws or anything like that you're weeding out. But what I guess, for the Huling Station brand, what kind of profile with these single barrels are you going after?
For the most part, going off my personal preference, but I also do try to get barrels that are very different from each other. So try to get one that's heavy on the sweeter notes and try to get one that's heavier on the smoky, oaky notes. So I try to just get a variety of barrels that I think are just, they stand well on their own.
Yeah, and that's, and I feel like we go a good kind of oaky forward bourbon on number 1. Number 2 is more like caramel forward to me. And number 3 is almost just like a
second between.
Almost more of like a citrusy forward. This is, I think we could have a real interesting selection here.
Yeah. For me, 648 is like, because it's got the fruity notes, got sweet notes, I get vanilla, I get a little bit of butterscotch, I get cinnamon and all that. But it's like a kind of a, not midway point between 1 and 2, but it's giving me characteristics that I pulled from both 1 and 2 all into one.
See, I really like, I like the 648 nose.
Yeah. That's when I get a lot of fun.
There's something about 607 that the mouthfeel, to me, is a little more viscous. It is just, I don't know if that's perceived, if that's maybe there's been more, barrel evaporation or favorite.
Probably 2.
I have a guest taster with me off camera who I'm also. All right, D, so far, favorites, if you had to, we won't rank them 1 to 3, but so your favorite was number 1?
Well, now my favorite is number 3.
Number 3, okay.
Tasting number 3, my favorite is number 3.
Okay, I like that. 3 is really good. Okay, so what kind of?
It's giving me
I'm kind of between 2 and 3.
Yeah.
Reckon.
Did you add any water to your foot?
No, I need to do that. I did on the first go round. And Alex, typically, on projects like this, are you nosing these? Are you bringing them down to a specific proof whenever you're tasting, or what does that process look like?
For single barrel, I actually just pull it straight from the barrel.
That sounds amazing.
Because I limit myself to 8 barrels a day. That's all I can do.
Yeah.
But we bottle at cask strength, and so I want to be able to taste it at that
What
strain.
they're gonna get, yeah. Okay, D, I'm gonna ask you to
2 and 3 with added water.
I know. That's add a little bit of water, and to me, with me speaking, but
it lets me know what I'm like, which one I would have like.
See, I think 2 kind of holds up a little bit better. I'm gonna throw up a big word of the structure is a little stronger with. And that's what we should probably say for the live video. Like, we're really splitting hairs here. This is not a. It's not a. Really, if you bottled any of these and we had a seal box sticker on it, I think everybody would be happy. So, although I do get a nice like. Yeah. Okay. So we're coming up on almost 30 minutes, and I kind of want to get into a few other things. D, what do you think? Gut instinct.
Now that I've tasted them both with water, it's not even about the flavor that's giving me preference. It's about the texture. You like the viscosity in 2, where I like the heavier, a little more velvety, more warming mouthfeel texture in 3. And so 3 is my preference.
Okay. I think I can get behind that. I like that. Yeah, 3 does have a more kind of robust taste and everything, and
Thin out as fast.
it does. The finish is a little bit longer, and all right. So 3 it is. That would be barrel 648.
That's the one I was leaning towards.
Oh yeah. Now she says it. Yeah. All right. And what I always do is, this pen's not writing. I throw a sample on, although we do have it for recording. I also do that as well, but because it never fails. Got it. I'll go back and like start to put into the email with the production team and everything. And it's like, what barrel did you pick again? I'm like, good question. Let me find which one I starred. But no, those are very good. So kind of on to the next topic a little bit. So we also have a sample of the Old Dominick blend and the Old Dominick wheat whiskey, as well as the gin, which if you have time, I'd love to kind of talk about those a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the blend, is the blend essentially what we were tasting, but your blend of it, and then it's proof down to what's typical Huling Station. It's proof down slightly, isn't it?
So yeah, the red label is 100 proof.
Okay.
And then the blue label, which is our blend of straight whiskeys, is bottled at 100 proof as well. But that is actually 50% bourbon and 50% wheat. So it's a blend of our 2 products. So if you take the red label and you mix it with the gray label, you get the blue label.
I actually like the blend.
That okay. So the blend, got it. So I have not had the blend then, because I was thinking it was just the red label that, but I don't think I've had the blend.
I sent you the blend.
No, I do have it. I just haven't tasted it yet.
Okay.
I do have my sample. And Alex, so D is at our warehouse in DC, and I'm here in Florida, so it's always a fun coordination. And this is why I always ask for 2 sample kits, because he is really good about getting me my samples. I am terrible about sending samples back. Like, hold on, what was I supposed to do again? So now the wheat whiskey, is that something that same process, whereas MGP with your recipe and everything? Okay.
Yep.
And let's see. So wheat whiskey, same as rye or bourbon. It's got to be at least 51% wheat, new charred oak. What's the breakdown of wheat on this one?
We actually do 83% wheat.
Oh, okay.
So it's a lot of wheat. And it's 12% corn and then 5% malted barley.
Okay.
Okay, so very little corn and malted barley, which, you know, and I always tell people this when they're like, well, what's the difference? It's like, well, think about, okay, if bourbon is cornbread and rye is rye toast and wheat is just, you know, plain rolled oats toast or something like that, you can think about it in that way, but then to think about it in a whiskey is a little bit different.
For sure. Because we're not throwing those breads in the barrels.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's got, man, almost a nice like little minerality on the taste and just a nice soft taste, not nearly as much spice as the bourbons we were trying, and really interesting. So now when will...
Yeah, for me, wheat whiskey is a fantastic... the wheat whiskey, I just like it. It's an introductory whiskey. It's so light, it's approachable. Bourbon tends to be really intense and in your face. So this is kind of a nice product for new whiskey drinkers.
And what's the proof on the wheat whiskey?
We did 90 proof.
Okay. Got it. Yeah, I think my Wi-Fi is messing up here. I tried to slightly close my office door because they're tearing down a bridge in the background. So there's been jackhammers going for like 2 weeks straight, but
activity in that area.
Something else. Cool. Well, so before we sign off, I'd like to jump in on the gin as well. And this is one that you developed, correct?
I did. Took about a year of lab distillations to come up with. I came up with 2 recipes, and we released both of them under a distillery-only R&D label. Kind of let people give me their feedback, and then from that, we decided to go with the number 10 formula, which is, we call it the Southern Gin.
What's the base spirit for the gin, and what's the botanicals you chose?
Base spirits, just grain neutral spirits. Because of all the botanical flavor, I just didn't see any point in using anything that had a ton of other flavor because you're just going to cover it up. And then as far as the botanicals, let's see if I can remember all of them. Juniper, coriander, well, go ahead, my sales guy is just reading my bottle here. I got a good team here. All right, so it's juniper, coriander, angelica root, licorice root, grapefruit peel, chamomile, orris root, and ginger root. So a lot of earthy flavors. You get some citrus from the grapefruit peel, as well as the coriander. A little bit of floral, not a ton. My goal, I don't like juniper. It tastes like Christmas trees. So my goal was to go as far away from that as I could.
Yeah. Which you definitely get the citrus on the nose and maybe a little bit of that coming from the ginger as well. But man, really nice. Nicely spiced.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm with you. As much as I love Christmas time, I don't want to drink Christmas tree. And that's almost, you know, it kind of goes into that. It's like a Chinese 5-spice taste is a little bit of what I get, where it's probably coming from the ginger and the coriander and all that. But that's really nice as well. So I don't want to put you on the spot, but I believe we have discussed getting some of the wheat whiskey in the blend and the gin in as well with this private barrel. So for those watching,
so much that the sample bottle is gone.
Yeah. Dee said y'all needed to send another sample bottle, and
That bottle is long gone. We have a 3 o'clock cocktail hour. Days almost over, so we pick something to sip on. It has made.
that is really tasty. I like that a lot. So, all right. Well, with that, we'll go ahead and kind of wrap it up. But Alex, thank you so much for joining us and kind of explaining the product. It's always fun to taste with the people that made them, to give us a little more insight of what we're tasting. And always fun to taste. We're going to have that knockdown drag out one of these days of a barrel. The problem is we're just sitting good, too many good barrel picks. So,
Also,
thank you all for joining me, and we're looking forward to getting the barrel in. So, thank you.
Thank you.
I have been doing the Old Dominick mask that